December 1985 had to be a joyous time for Thomas Bilotti. Christmas was in the air, and New York City was bustling with holiday shoppers. Everything seemed to be going his way. The promotion of a lifetime, the one he had only daydreamed about, just landed in his lap. After years of service to New York's mafia crime family, the Gambinos, finally paid off. The underboss of the family, Agnello Della Croce, died of cancer on December 2nd, and the current reigning godfather, Paul Castellano, picked Thomas Bilotti to replace him. He was now second in command of the largest and most powerful family in New York. It was an honor to be chosen, and Tommy was proud. But just 2 weeks later, the dream came to a nightmarish end as Tommy Bilotti lay dead in the street just outside of the popular Sparks Steakhouse of multiple gunshots. 6 bullets had ripped through his head and body, and a pool of blood mingled with the cold, wet rain began to form a puddle. Thomas Bilotti was born to first-generation Italian-American immigrants. His father hailed from Rome, Italy, and his mother from Lombardy and Milan. Tommy was born on March 23, 1940 in New York City, and had 2 brothers, James and Joseph, who also followed him into a life of organized crime with the Gambino family. Tommy had a reputation for being a tough guy, feared by street-level thugs in and around New York. Carl Sifakis writes, "What Castellano liked best about Bilotti was his toughness. He was known to smash opponents over the head with a baseball bat as a way of ending disputes. In one reported incident, an agitated Bilotti connected with a right hook to knock out Colombo associate Robert Pate, who fell to the floor unconscious as a result of the blow. Dispute over." As far as intellect was concerned, FBI agents Joseph O'Brien and Andres Kernis, in their book Boss of Bosses, the FBI and Paul Castellano paint a picture that is less than complimentary. They write, "Bilotti was basically a pit bull with shoes on. If he had a business ability beyond choreographing a shakedown or calculating the interest owned on Shylock loans, it didn't show. In a milieu not known for its conversational fitness, Bilotti distinguished himself by spluttering inarticulateness. Once, when describing how a family problem was handled improperly, Bilotti stated, 'It's gonna be like throwing out the baby with the bathtub.' When he was corrected that he meant bathwater, Bilotti shrugged it off, saying, 'F it.' Later, the agents wrote, Bilotti was short, 5'7". He was stubby, a rock-solid 22. He wore a bad toupee. He had no tact, no charm, no sense of humor. He had a big mouth, and his piggish eyes were too close together. To the concept of self-control, he was a stranger." Alan May, writing for the American Mafia, noted, "The FBI transcripts of the tape-recorded conversation from Castellano's Todd Hill mansion on Staten Island and from the encounters with FBI agent O'Brien, it is easy to envision Bilotti as a Joe Pesci-type mob character. Short, ruthless, excitable, and, if possible, more foul-mouthed than Pesci." Transcripts reveal that practically all of Bilotti's comments were peppered with the F word. These character faults took a back seat to one of Bilotti's best attributes, loyalty. He never questioned authority and always carried out orders to the T given to him by his superiors. As a young man, Bilotti joined the Staten Island crew of Gambino capo Michael D'Alessio. Bilotti also spent time as Alexander DeBrisi's chauffeur and bodyguard. Bilotti later became a criminal associate of John D'Alessio, the aforementioned brother of Michael. Bilotti's areas of crime included labor racketeering, extortion, and loan sharking. Moving up in the ranks of the Gambino family, he caught the eye of Paul Castellano, who made Tommy his protege. Bilotti was so trusted by the boss that he was given carte blanche access to Castellano's Todd Hill, Staten Island estate known as the White House. Bilotti had a no-show job at Sacramix, Castellano's cement company on Staten Island. He was also heavily involved in the Steamfitters Local 638 of the Plumbers Union, accepting bribes and kickbacks for the family. With the death of Don Carlo Gambino in 1976, Castellano first promoted Bilotti to capo, giving him his own crew. But all was not well. Many members of the Gambino family were disapproving of Bilotti and considered him to be nothing more than Castellano's stooge. This mindset was widespread in the traditional blue-collar or streetwise wing of the family, led by Underboss Neil Della Croce. This wing considered Castellano to be greedy and out of touch with the concerns of the average street soldier. When Della Croce died on December 2nd, the word went out that Bilotti was the new underboss. As news of Bilotti's promotion spread throughout the family, so did anger and resentment. Capo John Gotti and Salvatore Gravano, believing that the best days of the family were in the past unless something radically changed, took matters in their own hands. They orchestrated a plot to kill both Castellano and Bilotti. The hit would take place on December 16th outside of Sparks Steakhouse in one of the most spectacular mob hits in recent history. Former Gotti underboss turned government informant, Sammy the Bull Gravano, explains what happened next. "We were sitting in a car," he told a federal grand jury in Brooklyn. "We were looking down at Sparks Steakhouse. A car drew up alongside us and stopped for a red light. I looked, and I saw that it was Mr. Castellano in another Lincoln driven by Thomas Bilotti. I just turned and I told John they're right next to us." Gravano said he used a walkie-talkie to notify the gunmen up ahead that they were stopped at the light, the first car, and they were coming through. When the light turned, the car with Mr. Castellano drove across 3rd Avenue and parked in front of Sparks Steakhouse. Waiting for the two men, he said, were 4 gunmen wearing white trench coats and black Russian hats. The shooters ran over to them and started shooting them. Mr. Castellano was shot first, and Mr. Bilotti was getting out of the car when somebody came up behind him and shot him. Then Mr. Gotti slowly drove up to the murder scene. I noticed, I looked down at Tommy Bilotti, and I said to John, he's gone. Why this emphasis on Bilotti? Could it have been a bit of mob logic? If Bilotti was allowed to live, then he could have possibly rallied support for the murdered Castellano, and a full-scale inter-family war would have ensued. Not to mention, as underboss, he was next in line to be boss. No, Thomas Bilotti had to go too. Both men were buried at the Moravian Cemetery near Todd Hill. Thomas Bilotti's remains were buried in a simple grave, just 50 yards from his late boss. Perhaps a symbolic gesture that even in death, Thomas Bilotti, the ever-loyal bodyguard, is still watching over his godfather.